The Athribis student discovery. Picture yourself kneeling in the scorching Egyptian desert, sifting through thousands of broken pottery fragments that have been buried for 2,000 years. Your hands are covered in ancient dust, and every piece you lift could contain words written by people who lived when Rome ruled the world. This isn't treasure hunting for gold or jewels. This is something far more precious. This is the moment when the voices of ordinary ancient Egyptians speak to us across 2 millennia of silence. What we're about to explore challenges everything you think you know about ancient education, literacy, and daily life in the shadow of the pharaohs. Hidden beneath the sands of Athribis, an ancient city in Upper Egypt, archaeologists have uncovered the largest collection of inscribed pottery fragments ever found. Over 27,000 pieces of broken jars and vessels, each one a page from the notebook of ancient Egypt. These aren't royal proclamations or religious texts. These are shopping lists, homework assignments, punishment exercises, and the doodles of children who lived 2,000 years ago. The discovery happened almost by accident. Professor Christian Leitz and his team from the University of Tübingen were excavating the ruins of Athribis, searching for evidence of the city's role as an administrative center during the Ptolemaic period. What they found was something unprecedented in Egyptian archaeology. Layer after layer of pottery fragments, each one covered in writing. Not hieroglyphs carved into temple walls, but everyday handwriting scrawled in ink on pieces of broken clay vessels. It was like finding the deleted files from an ancient computer, a complete record of daily life that was never meant to survive. The sheer volume of the discovery is staggering. Imagine walking into a library where every book has been torn into pieces and scattered across the floor. That's what the Archaeological excavation site looked like. 27,000 fragments of pottery, each one requiring careful cleaning, photographing, translation, and cataloguing. The process of reassembling this ancient puzzle has taken years, and what emerges is a picture of ancient Egyptian society that's completely different from what we see in movies or traditional histories. 80% of these Ostraca, as archaeologists call them, are written in Demotic script. This was the everyday writing system of ancient Egypt, evolved from the more formal hieratic script around 600 BC. It was the equivalent of cursive handwriting used for business transactions, personal letters, and administrative records. The remaining fragments are written in Greek, which makes sense since Athribis was part of the Greek-ruled Ptolemaic kingdom during this period. But scattered throughout the collection are pieces written in hieratic, the formal script used by scribes and priests, suggesting that multiple levels of education were happening simultaneously in this ancient city. Among the business records and administrative documents, something extraordinary began to emerge. Hundreds of pottery pieces contained what could only be described as schoolwork. There were arithmetic problems where students calculated the volume of granaries and the weight of grain shipments. There were grammar exercises where children practiced writing their names and copying religious texts. There were lists of months, numbers from 1 to 100, and vocabulary exercises in multiple scripts. This wasn't just evidence of education. This was proof of a sophisticated school system that taught both practical skills and advanced literacy to ordinary citizens. The most remarkable discovery was what researchers called the bird alphabet. On fragment after fragment, children had carefully copied lists of birds, with each bird's name corresponding to a letter of the alphabet. The ibis for the letter representing the sound of the English letter Y, the hawk for H, the owl for the letter that makes the M sound. It was a teaching tool that made learning letters memorable and fun, connecting abstract symbols to familiar animals that children would see along the Nile River every day. But it was the punishment exercises that truly brought these ancient students to life. Hundreds of pottery pieces contained the same phrases written over and over again in shaky, childish handwriting. I will not steal the bread. I am a bad student. I will obey my teacher. The repetitive nature of these exercises, combined with the clearly frustrated handwriting, tells a story that every parent and teacher recognizes. These were children serving detention, ancient Egyptian style. Misbehaving students forced to write lines until their hands cramped and they promised to behave better. One particular fragment shows a child practicing the phrase, "I will not be absent from school," repeated 17 times in increasingly sloppy handwriting. You can almost see the student's attention wandering, the grip on the reed pen getting looser, the letters becoming more hurried and careless with each repetition. It's a moment of pure human connection across 2,000 years, a reminder that children have always pushed boundaries and tested authority, whether in modern classrooms or ancient Egyptian schools. The implications of this discovery extend far beyond cute stories about ancient students. These Ostraca prove that literacy in ancient Egypt was much more widespread than archaeologists previously believed. Traditional estimates suggested that only about 1% of the population could read and write, mostly priests and government officials. But the Athribis evidence shows organized schools teaching multiple scripts to children from different social classes. The handwriting on these fragments ranges from the careful strokes of advanced students to the wobbly letters of beginners, suggesting a structured educational system with different levels of instruction. The economic records among the Ostraca paint a picture of a bustling commercial center where literacy was essential for daily business. There are receipts for bread, beer, wine, and oil. There are records of taxes paid and debts owed. There are inventories of grain and livestock. All of this required a literate merchant class and educated administrators, far more than the tiny percentage that traditional histories suggest could read and write. The multilingual nature of the education revealed in these fragments is particularly striking. Children were learning to write in Demotic for everyday use, Greek for official business with the Ptolemaic government, and hieratic for religious and traditional purposes. This suggests a level of cultural sophistication and educational planning that rivals modern multilingual education programs. These ancient students were being prepared to function in a complex cosmopolitan world where different languages and scripts served different purposes. The dating of these Ostraca places them in the Ptolemaic and early Roman periods, roughly from 300 BC to 100 AD. This was a time when Egypt was ruled by Greek pharaohs descended from Alexander the Great's general Ptolemy and later by Roman emperors. The educational system revealed in these fragments shows how Egyptian culture adapted to foreign rule while maintaining its own traditions. Children learned Greek to communicate with their rulers, but they also learned traditional Egyptian scripts to maintain their cultural identity. The physical preservation of these Ostraca is itself remarkable. Pottery fragments survive much better than papyrus in Egypt's dry climate, but ink on pottery is extremely fragile. The fact that we can still read writing that was scribbled on broken jars 2,000 years ago speaks to the exceptional preservation conditions in the Athribis ruins. The site was gradually buried by sand and debris, creating an anaerobic environment that prevented the organic inks from decomposing completely. The archaeological context of these discoveries provides crucial information about how ancient Egyptian schools operated. The Ostraca were found in concentrated areas that appear to have been dedicated educational spaces, with evidence of benches or seating areas where students would have gathered for lessons. The distribution of different types of exercises suggests that students were grouped by skill level, with beginners practicing basic letters and numbers, while advanced students worked on complex mathematical problems and literary texts. One of the most intriguing aspects of the Athribis school records is the evidence of standardized curriculum. The same arithmetic problems appear on multiple fragments written by different students. The same grammar exercises show up repeatedly. The bird alphabet follows the same order and includes the same species across different pieces. This suggests a formal educational system with established textbooks and teaching methods, not just informal apprenticeships or family-based learning. The punishment exercises reveal interesting details about ancient Egyptian classroom discipline and moral education. The phrases that students were forced to copy emphasize honesty, obedience, and attendance. I will not lie to my parents. I will not steal from the temple. I will attend school every day. These weren't just arbitrary punishments, but moral instruction designed to reinforce social values and personal responsibility. Some fragments show students practicing writing their own names repeatedly, suggesting that personal identity and literacy were closely connected in ancient Egyptian culture. Learning to write your name was probably one of the first and most important skills taught in these schools, just as it is in modern education. Other fragments show children copying religious prayers and hymns, indicating that spiritual education was integrated with practical literacy training. The mathematical exercises found among the school Ostraca demonstrate a sophisticated understanding of arithmetic, geometry, and practical problem-solving. Students were calculating the area of fields, the volume of storage containers, and the quantities of materials needed for construction projects. These weren't abstract mathematical concepts, but practical skills that would be essential for careers in agriculture, trade, and administration. One particularly fascinating fragment shows a student's attempt to calculate the height of a building based on the length of its shadow at different times of day. This represents an understanding of trigonometry and geometric principles that were supposedly developed much later in Greek mathematics. The exercise suggests that ancient Egyptian education included advanced mathematical concepts that modern scholars have underestimated. The presence of astronomical calculations among the school exercises is equally remarkable. Students were learning to track the movements of planets and stars, calculate the dates of religious festivals based on lunar cycles, and understand the relationship between celestial events and agricultural seasons. This wasn't just religious education, but practical training in the sophisticated calendar systems that governed ancient Egyptian society. The Greek Ostraca in the collection reveal the challenges of cultural integration during the Ptolemaic period. Some fragments show Egyptian students struggling with Greek grammar, making the same types of mistakes that modern language learners make when studying foreign languages. Other pieces show bilingual exercises where students wrote the same words in both Greek and Demotic, demonstrating the practical necessity of multilingual education in a multicultural society. The artistic elements among the school Ostraca provide insight into the creative aspects of ancient Egyptian education. Children drew pictures of animals, plants, and human figures in the margins of their exercises. Some fragments show elaborate doodles and sketches that would be familiar to any modern teacher who has seen students decorating their homework assignments. These artistic expressions remind us that creativity and imagination were part of the educational experience even in ancient times. The handwriting analysis of these fragments reveals individual personalities emerging across the centuries. Some students wrote with careful, precise strokes, taking obvious pride in their penmanship. Others scribbled hastily, more concerned with finishing their assignments than with beautiful writing. The progression from beginner to advanced writing is visible in collections of fragments that appear to come from the same student over months or years of education. The economic information embedded in these school exercises provides unprecedented insight into the daily life of ordinary ancient Egyptians. Students practiced calculating wages for workers, costs of materials, and profits from trade ventures. These exercises reveal price structures, labor costs, and economic relationships that illuminate how ancient Egyptian society actually functioned at the grassroots level. The religious content among the educational materials shows how spiritual training was integrated into practical education. Students copied prayers, hymns, and religious formulas not just for spiritual development, but as reading and writing practice. This integrated approach to education suggests that ancient Egyptians saw no separation between practical skills and spiritual knowledge, viewing both as essential for a complete education. The social dynamics revealed in these fragments challenge many assumptions about ancient Egyptian society. The variety of handwriting styles and skill levels suggests that education was available to children from different social classes, not just the elite. The practical nature of many exercises indicates that schools were preparing students for careers in trade, agriculture, and administration, not just religious or governmental positions. The preservation of these fragments has required cutting-edge conservation techniques. Each piece must be carefully cleaned to reveal the faded ink without damaging the pottery surface. Digital photography and computer enhancement allow researchers to read text that is barely visible to the naked eye. The process of cataloging and translating 27,000 fragments represents one of the largest textual archaeology projects ever undertaken. The international collaboration required for this project demonstrates how modern archaeology operates. The University of Tübingen team works with Egyptian archaeologists, conservators from multiple countries, and specialists in ancient languages and scripts. The translation work alone requires experts in Demotic, Hieratic, and Ancient Greek, each bringing specialized knowledge to decode different aspects of the collection. The digital documentation of these Ostraca creates a permanent archive that will be invaluable for future research. High-resolution photographs and detailed translations are being compiled into a comprehensive database that scholars worldwide can access. This represents a new model for archaeological publication, making primary source materials available to researchers everywhere rather than limiting access to those who can visit specific museums or institutions. The impact of the Athribis discovery extends beyond Egyptian archaeology into broader questions about ancient literacy, education, and social organization. If a single ancient city contained this level of educational activity, how many similar schools existed across the ancient world? How many other collections of everyday writing await discovery in archaeological sites that haven't been fully excavated? The human stories emerging from these fragments remind us that history isn't just about kings and conquests, but about ordinary people living ordinary lives. The student who kept misspelling the same word, the child who drew a cat in the margin of a math exercise, the teenager who wrote love poetry on the back of a grocery list. These voices from the past connect us to our shared humanity in ways that royal monuments and religious texts cannot. The technological analysis of the inks and pottery provides additional insights into ancient Egyptian daily life. Chemical analysis reveals the composition of inks made from soot, plant extracts, and mineral pigments. The pottery fragments show evidence of different clay sources and firing techniques, indicating a complex economy of pottery production and reuse that supported widespread literacy. The linguistic evolution visible in these fragments documents how languages change over time. Demotic script underwent significant changes during the centuries when these Ostraca were written, and the student exercises preserve examples of linguistic transitions that would otherwise be lost. The mixture of Egyptian and Greek vocabulary in bilingual exercises shows how cultures blend and adapt through educational contact. The seasonal patterns in the school exercises suggest that ancient Egyptian education followed agricultural cycles, with intensive learning periods during times when children weren't needed for farming activities. The content of exercises changes throughout the year, with astronomical calculations appearing before major festivals and agricultural problems coinciding with planting and harvest seasons. As we reach the end of our investigation into this remarkable discovery, we're left with profound questions about what other secrets lie buried beneath the sands of Egypt. The Athribis Ostraca represent just one ancient city over a few centuries. Multiply this by the hundreds of ancient settlements scattered along the Nile River, and we begin to understand the vast scope of human knowledge and experience that remains hidden beneath the surface of our modern world. The voices of these ancient students remind us that learning, curiosity, and the desire to understand the world are fundamental human characteristics that transcend time and culture. The child who practiced writing the bird alphabet 2,000 years ago was engaging in the same essential process as a modern student learning to read. The student who wrote punishment lines was experiencing the same frustration and eventual understanding that comes with discipline and structure. This discovery forces us to reconsider our assumptions about ancient civilizations and their capabilities. If ordinary citizens in a provincial Egyptian city could read and write in multiple scripts, conduct complex mathematical calculations, and engage with sophisticated educational curricula, what does this tell us about human potential in the ancient world? What other evidence of advanced knowledge and sophisticated social organization awaits discovery in archaeological sites around the globe? The Athribis student lists are more than archaeological artifacts. They are a bridge across time, connecting us to the universal human experiences of learning, growing, and struggling to understand our place in the world. They remind us that the desire for knowledge and the challenges of education are constants in human experience, whether in ancient Egyptian classrooms or modern schools.